joining me right now is Ryan Ramsdale. You are a singer. Can you tell me a little bit more about your career?
Sure. I guess it's been 30 years since I was first given a guitar. I got really into Elvis Presley when I was 15 years old. It was kind of a choice to be ironic, and then it ended up being a real thing. And still a big fan today. And I kind of felt like I'm missing something here, and I told my mom that. And so for my 15th birthday, they bought me a guitar. And sort of writing songs has been there right from the get-go. Some terrible songs were written when I was 15, and it's been a journey ever since, right up to several recordings. It hasn't been something that I pursued, as a career, I guess, on the performance side. I worked in the industry for several years on the technical side, was around it quite a bit, but it really, I'd say, is categorized more as a passion project.
Okay, sweet. Yeah. And so you also kind of have more so like a folk vibe to your music. How is it when you said that writing songs also kind of was always there? How was it to incorporate kind of Christian music and folk music together?
I love that question. And I'm glad you mentioned the genre, because it's like, it's kind of like a fine line. You might listen to something on a poem Hidden in Weakness and be like, well, that sounds very Nashville. Like the third song in particular, Paltry Now Precious, is really, really Nashville-y on the recording. Whereas other ones might sound more straight up folk. So that's kind of how I like it. Now, how does it merge together with faith? That's just a story of transformation. I didn't come to Christ until I was 24 years old, and I had no background in faith at all. So music, or myself and music, have kind of an odd relationship, because it sort of marked an obsession, I would say, in my early 20s. And like, I wanted to be famous, and I wanted to, smash stuff and get arrested and whatever else is, associated with that lifestyle. I actually wanted that. And, so when I came to Christ, my life was completely transformed. And that included music. So I was in this kind of awkward spot, because I was in a folk band at the time, and we were doing okay. Our album charted on the university stations here. We were playing out a lot. And then I was, at the time, kind of the primary singer-songwriter, and all of a sudden my content changed. And there was full alignment around that. So we had to make a decision. We did it amicably, and we parted ways. So then I was kind of like, then I felt like a real troubadour, right? Sling my guitar over my back, and where do I go next? Exactly. And how do I start expressing this in song? So the style, like Ryan Ramsdale's style, has been, I would say, fairly consistent. And then just the message has changed.
All right. So that band that you said that you were in, is that the Old John Cotton Band, or is that something different entirely?
Something different entirely, yeah.
Okay. So then what is the Old John Cotton Band?
The Old John Cotton Band is just to, I guess, give a name to a group of extremely talented people who have agreed to play with me this coming week. And they were on the most recent album. Okay. So like Old John Cotton, that's a song title from the first spiritual album I put out in 2007. And I think if there was anything that, would resemble a classic or maybe a potential hit, that track would be it. Okay. So as that CD, remember those, as those circulated amongst my friends and our church community, the most feedback I got was on that song. Kind of a high energy folk 70s pop kind of thing. And then so these guys I play with now, I don't even know that I knew them back then. And they just kind of latched onto the name, because the working project name had Old John Cotton in it for the most recent album. So it was a quick way to throw a band name together, I guess.
I like it.
Yeah.
Also, just kind of going back a little bit, you said that you didn't kind of become religious until you were 24. What changed? Like, what happened?
What happened?
Yeah.
Testimony-wise, that is, I guess, the heart of that question. Well, I mean, I was a completely self-obsessed individual, and that's all tied to those goals I had. And I was messed up in, sort of drug lifestyle, alcohol lifestyle. And, I think of Proverbs chapter 1, and it says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom.
Mm.
And that's where it started. I was gripped by fear, by the potential that God was real. Because I thought if he is real and he's to show up in some way, what am I going to say? What justification am I going to have for my behavior, my lifestyle?
Mm.
And I was very, very aware that I could come up with nothing. And then a few friends around me were getting saved. And I'm like, what is that? Like, what are you talking about? What happened to you? So I had a lot of questions for them.
Mm.
And it all kind of culminated camping in Birds Hill Park by myself, summer of 2002. As I said, 24 years old, and I had a Bible. It was my grandfather's Bible that he had taken overseas in World War II, and I had it, little thing, still have it.
Wow.
And I just was reading it, and I got to Luke chapter 4, and Jesus read from Isaiah in the temple, and he read it with authority and said, "Today that scripture is fulfilled in me," and it hit me like it just came alive. It was all God's work. I didn't work for it, and nobody really led me to that moment. So it was very unique.
Well, that is quite unique, because I have heard a lot of stories of people like seeing friends or stuff like that kind of ask them or like bring them someplace to kind of, urge them towards it. But this is kind of like a self-discovery. I mean, yeah, kind of like a self-discovery story. Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's breadcrumbs, right? And like anyone who gives a testimony has to come up with the 30-second version or the 2-minute version.
Yeah.
But really, there's probably for everyone, there's like a 5-hour version. And I could point out some amazing breadcrumbs that God had left for me all the way through. I'm going to tell some of that story when we play the show on Friday, because I really want to tie the narrative together of the transformed life, because the songs are expressions of that. Some of the songs are written purely about some of those big milestones prior to, like, how did he open my eyes to this or that? And I mean, as I said, there were friends around me who were getting saved, so there were other people kind of watering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, talking about the performance, you are kind of releasing, you have already released, but you're kind of showcasing your new album.
Yeah,
Can you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, showcasing is a great word for that. We released the album in July, and I mean, we're doing a lot of things in life, and my wife and I are developing some property, so we really just turned to project time and then getting availability for these musicians together.
Yeah.
So it does so happen following my birthday, I asked myself, what do I want to do for my birthday? Well, I want to release or showcase these songs. So that's why we put it together, really. It's on Friday, January 27th at 7 p.m., CMU campus in the Laudamus Auditorium. It's a beautiful room. You been there?
I went to school there.
Oh, well, perfect. Yeah, so you know the auditorium. I mean, it's got a very classic look to it, a little bit of a churchy look to it. It's all pews, so some people might want to bring little cushions. I don't know. It's a very acoustic room. It's a very live room. So, I'm just like really excited about this opportunity. The opportunity to showcase the songs, the story, and play with this group of guys again, too.
Yeah. So you this album you said was released already back in July.
Yeah.
Is this kind of like an album based on your religious discovery, or is it kind of like inspired by something else entirely?
That's a good question. So this is the third album that I've recorded since becoming a Christian. So the first two are very much more a showcase of that story in particular.
Okay.
Whereas A Poem Hidden in Weakness showcases more of like the trials. Like the last 5 years of my life, my wife and I, our family, we've faced some really big things that we haven't had to face before. And, So some of these songs really go into that. You know, your faith is so stretched that sometimes you wonder if it just might snap altogether.
Mm-hmm.
And that's quite a few of the songs, the consistent narrative would be on that. And that's why it's called a poem hidden in weakness. Like there's something beautiful in there, but when you're in the middle of that storm, it certainly doesn't seem that way.
Yeah. Well, I actually took a listen through the entire album when I first contacted you. And there was one song that really captured my attention, and I don't even know, but it's the Corn Coffee Shuffle.
Okay.
I absolutely love it. I don't know.
Okay, yeah.
I was listening to it, I'm like, nice, all right, the lyrics are going to come, and then it never did. I'm like,
it didn't, no.
I love it. I just want to know, what was kind of the thought process behind Corn Coffee Shuffle?
Okay. Every album, I do tend to put an instrumental of some sort on it.
Oh, okay.
So, I guess the style would be kind of a shuffle. It's kind of like a little bit of swing music almost, acoustic swing music in a way. Corn Coffee, one time my wife and I had rented a cabin, and it had a limited water supply. Okay. We had boiled cobs of corn, and then I decided I wanted to make a pot of coffee and just try and be thrifty with the water supply. So I actually poured the corn water through the drip coffee brewer, and we made a batch of corn coffee, which was horrendous. So the title and the music don't really have any other connection. I don't even know at what point I put that title on that particular piece of music, but that's where that comes from.
It's unique, that's for sure.
Yeah. Good question.
So, is there anything else that you want people to know about, whether it's your music, about your performance, or anything like that?
Absolutely. From a spiritual point of view, something that I've been maybe conflicted with for the last 20 years, we'll say, is really that thing that there's a music and there's a music industry, and it's very predictable. Like we know what musicians are going to do, we know how they're going to release it, we know how they're going to support it, and it goes back to Elvis Presley and the Beatles and so forth, and people have built on it along the way. And that was what was always in my head. That was the trajectory and the blueprint that was in my head. And then Jesus came in and disrupted this whole thing. And yet he gives us the gift. So it's kind of like, what are you supposed to do with it? Mm-hmm. Is it too gratifying in a way, like applause or performance or whatever, opposed to like expressions of praise? Mm-hmm. Or worship, or where does it fit? And I reconcile that through Psalm 40, when he says, I cried out, the Lord heard me, he pulled me out of the pit, out of the miry clay, and set my feet upon a rock, established my goings, and he's put a new song in my mouth. And I know that firsthand, because there was an old song and there's a new song. Mm-hmm. And he says, many shall hear it and shall fear and trust in the Lord. So there's almost this evangelical mechanism to music. Mm-hmm. And it's something, that's the part I want to fulfill. Like I want the story to be heard, not from a perspective of album sales or getting more listeners on Spotify and all that stuff, but that can get in your head and it can become distracting. Mm-hmm. And personally, I need to get away from that. But I do know that he gave me the songs for a reason. He gave me the ability to do what I do for a reason, and I do reconcile it to Psalm 40. So when it comes to the 27th of January at CMU, I really want to take that responsibility. I really want to take that seriously, and I want people to hear it, and I want people to hear the story not for my sake, not for the ability or the sake of these excellent musicians that I'm blessed to play with, mm-hmm. but really so that they can hear and they can discover.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure. Thank you.